everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. Sorry, I was having some audio issues there. Looks like I am good to go now. Apologize about the technical issues there in the beginning. So thank you all so much for joining today. My name is Courtney Peak. I'm the head of support here at Precise FP. A few housekeeping items before we get started. Everyone is on mute, but if you have any questions, go ahead and put those right in the GoToWebinar control panel. Should have some time at the end for a Q&A session to go over any questions that may come up. We're also recording the session and we'll be sending it out to everyone about an hour after the webinar ends. And we will also make sure to get this uploaded onto our YouTube channel as well. All right, so we have a lot to cover today. Let's go ahead and kind of dive right in. Today's focus is going to be around creating form templates for clients and co-clients. Some of the things that I wanted to touch on today was show you how you can actually create form templates that do capture data for both your client and their spouse or partner. Also showing you the benefit of using the pre-made data set pages to reduce the time that it takes to create templates. I'll show you how you can actually create your own custom pages that gather information at the individual level. And we'll also talk about some best practices around capturing e-signatures for both clients as well as for co-clients. So again, we have a lot to go ahead and dive into. So let me actually switch my screen here, bear with me. All right, so now we're looking at the Precise FP dashboard. So what I like to always kind of talk about at the beginning of my webinars is to really, especially for those who may be brand new to the platform, is our form library. So forms are what go out to the client to invite them to give you data. So even if it's something as small as checking a box or even typing in their mailing address, that is something that you're going to want to do on a form template. Now, the benefit of the form templates is that you can set those up on an individual level, or what you can actually do, and what we're going to be focusing on today, is you can actually set them up to gather information for the client as well as what we refer to as the co-client, so their spouse, partner, or significant other. Now, if you do happen to use our fact finders, they are actually already set up to gather information for both the client as well as the co-client. So I'm just going to pull up one of our fact finders here to show you what I mean. So let me go ahead and do a preview. This is how you're really going to be able to see how the form actually works when it goes out to your client. Now, when I preview this form, you'll see client name here. But when this actually goes out to a specific client, their name is going to populate there automatically. Now, if you send this out and you just have one of them on file, meaning you just have the client, maybe you don't know that they are that they've got a co-client. So you can just have the one person on file in Precise FP and send it out to them. And then what happens is they're going to see this co-client button. So when they actually click on co-client, add co-client, what it does is it actually duplicates everything on this page to accept information from another person. So in this case, the co-client. So as you can see here, everything on this page, personal details, contact details, it all duplicates over again, so that now this is at a client and co-client level. So we've got the client and the co-client. They can enter in, or the client can enter in their specific details for, in this case, the co-client. Now, when we get to the employment and income page on this fact finder, this is another page that is set up to be set at the co-client and client level. So employment information, more than likely they don't have the same job, so we want to make sure that we get the information in for the client as well as the employer information for the co-client. Now, when you get to something like the family members page, this is set at what we call a household level. So you'll notice that this does not have a co-client button on it. And the reason for that is because this information is typically shared amongst the client and the co-client. more than likely they share the same children in this case. So we wouldn't necessarily need to have individual information for the co-client, you know, and then just kind of continuing on this form. Same with like life insurance and health insurance. Now we do have an owner field on a lot of these, which it can actually pull in their information, but you'll notice that this page isn't set at a client slash co-client level, and the rest of these pages aren't either. So that's how you can kind of see. Now, these fact finders are already built in a way to allow your clients to enter information both for themselves as the client, as well as for their spouse or partner. Now, where I tend to see a lot of people make, I don't want to say mistakes, but where I see a lot of people kind of create more work for themselves than what needs to be done is they'll take one of these forms and they'll look at it when you install it, and I'll show you what this looks like in the editor so you can kind of see what I'm talking about as I'm kind of going along here. But what I tend to see some folks do is they will get to editing here. So we're in the editor, and when you're looking at this, you know, it does show that it's just information. It kind of looks like it is information for just one person, which I can understand that. So this is why we wanted to set up kind of these best practice series that I'm going to be doing throughout the year. This one was definitely a hot topic. We're seeing a lot of people kind of doing this, so this prompted this webinar. But when you're going into the editor, a good way to see if the page is set up on a client slash co-client level, a couple of ways actually. When you're in the editor, the pages along the right-hand side here, you'll see this little icon to the left of them. So this page right here with a little contact card indicates that this actually has the co-client area or button enabled on it. Whereas when we're previewing it, the family members page is an example of a household page. So that means that the co-client button is not enabled on this page. So what I tend to see people do here is, without the knowledge, they go in and they actually custom create their own spouse sections. So I will see folks go out here and even maybe right on this personal details page, they'll start kind of editing it, and what I see them do is I see them kind of create new fields. I'll show you here. So like they'll create a field for like spouse name, you know, spouse last name, things like that. And they'll be thinking that, okay, then if I'm adding these fields in, this is where the client's going to input their information, and this is where the spouse is going to input their information. Unfortunately, that's not how it's going to work in these precise FP forms. The magic is behind the labeling of the actual page here, or excuse me, not the labeling, but the displaying of the co-client button. So enabling that co-client button is what's going to do the trick for you. So creating these spouse fields is kind of creating more work for yourself, and it's ultimately not going to work, because the way that ours works, as you saw, is it duplicates this page over to accept information for another person. And when you're creating these custom fields like this, what happens too is if you send out a form like this to your client and you do not disable the co-client button, it's going to cause a lot of confusion, because when this goes out to your client, and if you have created custom spouse fields and you did not disable the option for the co-client button, I deleted the custom spouse name that I had here, but if, let's say I sent this out to my client and they got this form from me, they're going to see, let's just envision I've got the spouse fields here that I custom created, right? But then they're also going to see this add co-client button. Now what's going to happen? I'm going to click on that, right? As if because it's got messaging down here that they'll see, you know, click here to add information related to your spouse or partner. It duplicates everything over, including that spouse name. So that's going to be very confusing. So that's why we again say, don't create these spouse fields. They're already there. Now, some people don't like the terminology co-client. We understand that. So you can actually change the wording on that button if you want to call it something else. You can do that when you're here in the editor. Just go to translation up here, and then you'll see the verbiage that we're using here. So let's say I want to do add spouse partner, something like that. I'm gonna click on Save Changes. And if I do a preview of that form, now I'll be able to see that it no longer says add co-client. Instead, it's going to, let me show you here, add spouse partner. So you can change that if you want to, change it to whatever you want it to say. So it's basically, the form is going to be set up to accept information from a client and a co-client. So that is the benefit of using that co-client button here. So if you again use our one of our pre-made fact finders, this is already set up so you don't have to add any custom spouse fields. Any of these pages again that have that contact card next to them, you can also verify it under the page details that the co-client area or button is enabled. Means that again, everything on this page will duplicate over again so that information can then be input for a new person, in this case, their spouse or their partner. Now, another question we get asked a lot too is, can I make fields conditional if they add a co-client? The answer to that is no. Another thing is you can't have fields on a page show up for just the client and not for the co-client. Take, for instance, like marital status. I'll just pick on this field here. There isn't a way to set this field to just show up on the client and not show up on the co-client. So that's something to kind of think about too. When if you happen to be creating your own custom pages in your template, is anything that you lay down on the page that is going to have that co-client button enabled on it, every single field on this given page is going to duplicate over again. So then information can then be input for my co-client. Now, another best practice tip is, if you are going to be using a form or creating a form that is very similar to a fact finder, what we recommend is when you're ready to engage a client or a prospect with that, and in this case, I've got a client and a co-client on file. When I go to engage with the form and then I choose one of my fact finders, for example, you do see the option to engage a primary contact and a secondary contact. We would advise against engaging a secondary contact on something like a fact finder. Now, the reason behind that is because those fields that are not, or excuse me, those pages that are not at the client and co-client level are not going to be updated in real time. Meaning, if I send this out to myself and I also, send it out to my husband, and he's entering information maybe on the children page for our son as the first child, but I'm in the same page on my computer entering in our daughter for the first child. It's actually going to overwrite whatever is last. So just something to kind of think about there. Best practice with the fact finders, it is highly, highly recommended to only engage one of them. Now, it doesn't have to be the client. If you want to engage your co-client instead, just select their name and then you can send it out to them. So that's another best practice tip. When you are engaging someone and you already have the co-client on file for them, you can engage one or the other. So you can engage both, just I would definitely make sure that you make mention of that when they're working on that. That's why we say it's just best to only engage one of them versus both of them. Now, if you're sending out something like a risk tolerance questionnaire, that's something that is really set up to be sent out at an individual level. So in that case, what you can do is, you can engage with the form. I do have the risk tolerance installed. So in this case, that form is actually not set up at the client/co-client level. That form is set up at the household level because we want it to act as like an individual form, right? So we want to be able to, in this case, engage each one of them with their own individual form. So that's something that you're probably noticing here. When I select the risk tolerance, it doesn't show a secondary option. And the reason for that is because of that form. It actually, let me go into it and show you here. Let me pull up the risk tolerance questionnaire. So the risk tolerance questionnaire, as you can see, does not have any client/co-client type pages in it. Again, the reason behind that is because we wanted this to be at, not a client/co. We didn't want this to replicate over. We wanted this to act as a form that is going to be sent out to an individual versus in this case, a client/co-client situation. So in this case, this is how this risk tolerance form works. I'm able to send it to them individually. So in this case, I've got my clients here, which again, Emily is the client, Brandon is the co-client. I can go to engage with a form and I can choose that risk tolerance questionnaire. I can send it to Emily, create and send, that goes over to her. Once that's sent, I just come back and do the same thing, click on engage with a form, choose the risk tolerance again, and then this time I make Brandon the recipient of it. And that way it sends an individual form to Emily and it sends an individual form to Brandon. And that way they are each working on their own risk tolerance questionnaire. So that's another just kind of perspective to lay down to kind of explain the difference between setting the page at the client/co-client level versus that household level. So it doesn't duplicate everything over again. So hopefully that makes sense there. So that's, again, kind of the benefit of using what we already have in place is it is already set up to work for, in this case, like the fact finders, to work for a client of yours that has a spouse or partner. Whether you have them on file or not, again, as you saw with the fact finder, there's the add co-client button on file. But if you send out to somebody that you already have their spouse or partner on file, let me show you here. I'm just going to create this and preview it so you can see what a fact finder looks like when I send it out to someone. So in this case, I've already got a co-client on file. So what happens is that co-client button isn't there. What happens is the page is now already duplicated because we've got a co-client on file. So remember in the preview, when we were doing the preview of the form, we saw on the page it had the client name here, right? So when we actually send that out to the client, their names will be reflected there. So it's nice when it goes out to the client because they can easily see, okay, this section is for, in this case, Emily, this is all her information. And then, okay, now we see this is for Brandon's information and so on and so forth. So when I go to the next page, same thing, the employment income, this is her employment information and this is now Brandon's information. So if there is no co-client on file, then if you send them a form that has a page with a client/co-client on it, there'll be an add co-client button. If you go in and you have a co-client on file already, whether you may have manually created the client and the co-client, or maybe you imported them in, they'll be on file and that information would pre-fill into the fact finder for you automatically. So that's, the form creation there, being able to capture data for both your client and their spouse or partner. Again, cannot stress it enough, do not create your own custom spouse fields. Those are already there in the system for you. Now let's talk about using pre-made data set pages. The benefit of the data set pages is that it really reduces the time it takes to create a template. So let me go ahead and I'm just going to go to my templates and I'm going to create just a template from scratch here. So let me just pull in an image, give it a quick name, and give it a quick category. Let's create this. Okay, now let's go in and customize this. So when you're creating a new template, It does start you with a welcome page that's required on a high security level form. This acts as like a landing page when they click on the link. This is great for maybe adding like a logo or a profile picture of yourself, maybe a quick little blurb about with some text that just kind of explains what the form is, maybe giving them some guidance of how to navigate, click start when you're ready to go into the form, maybe talk about the authentication, what have you, just giving you some ideas there. And then the thank you page is just the last page that they see. Another thing that you can customize, brand, add some verbiage, maybe to put some follow-up steps, what have you. But the pages in between are what are the pages of the actual form that the client is going to be able to input data on. So your welcome page, thank you page can only have graphical elements on them. And they can't be deleted on a high security level template. And then on the middle pages here, which it starts you with a household type page, which you can change up if you want. So if I can go to this page and I can actually click on page details there, and I can enable that co-client button if I wanted to, and then I can start laying down fields. But what I want to talk about is, and actually let me just remove that page that's there. What I want to show you is how you can use the pre-made data set pages. Now the data set is only accessible to the company admin user in regards to editing and customizing those, but anybody who has access to build a form can actually bring in data set pages. So the data set pages are actually pages and fields that are within your client and prospect's profile. So the benefit of these is if you have data on file in the client's profile and you're using a form template that contains any data sets, it has the potential to pre-populate with information. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to click on where it says new page here when I'm in the editor, and I'm going to click on import from, and I'm going to choose the data set. So in this case, this is showing me all of my particular data set pages that I have. So if you're following along and you may see some extras, that's just because I custom built some. So let's just kind of keep it simple. Let me just choose the client details. So that's pulling in a page, and as you can see, now it pulls in all of those fields on that page. I can see everything that's here. I can remove anything that I may not need. Now, another thing that you're going to see here is when you're using data set pages is you're going to see these fields that have what we call connections to them. So if you see in the upper right hand corner, you've got this little connection icon. What that means is, again, this is connected to the data set, also known as the client profile. So just to keep it simple, let's use the first name, for example. We've got this first name data set field on this form. If I go to a client or a prospect profile on the client details page, under the personal details group, there is also a first name field. That is what it's connecting to. It's connecting to the first name field on the personal details group from the client details page. That means with that connection, if I send that form out that had that first name field on it, because it's connected to this data set, aka this profile field, that means when I send that form out to the client with that first name field, I have data on file for this client in that field. That means that data is going to pre-fill into that field for my client. If I did not have any data on file for the client, it would mean that that field would be blank. But if my client input data into that field and submitted it to me, I would be able to see and review that information now in that profile field. So that's the benefit of using the data sets, is it does store here in the profile. A lot of these data sets work with the integrations too, which is why if you happen to use one of our integration specific templates, you'll see that it contains nothing but those connected fields. They're all connected to the client profile. So that is the benefit of using the data set pages. As you can see, it took like, I don't know, 5 seconds to bring in all of these fields from my data set into this form. And I can keep going. So if I go and I click on, again, new page and import from the data set, maybe now I want to also pull in the family members page. So I'm going to click on that. Now I've got that entire page from the data set and all of the fields and groups within it here on my form. And I can keep going, right? And it's auto saving as you're going through here and you're building out this form. Now, let me show you here. I've got this form created, right? I just kept it very simple. Let me show you what I'm talking about. When I go and I now send this out to a client of mine. So I'm gonna go to my client and I'm just going to just do review and edit just so we can take a look at it and I can show you. I already have data on file for my client. Now while that's loading here, let me actually close out of this and I'm gonna go to my client's profile. So I pulled in the client details and I pulled in the family members. Well, I can see all of the information that I have on file for my client, right? I've got their address, email, contact information, driver's license information, and then the family members, I've got their children on file. Looks like Tessa and James is who they have listed as their children. So now when I actually go to that form that I just created for them, right? I created that form. I use the client details and I use the family members page from the data set. And I'm engaging my client with this form. Here is that form, what it looks like to the client. All that information that we saw in the profile pre-fills into the form. All that information that we were just looking at in the profile shows up on this actual template. That's because we used a data set page here. This is information that's from the data set, AKA the profile, and that information I already have on file for my client, so it's coming through into the form. And it is definitely recommended using the data sets in situations where you're creating a template. I mean, you can pull in the client details page and, you know, maybe you don't want the driver's license section, we call them groups. You can remove what you don't want. Even individual fields. You can come out here and you can remove what you do not want on this form, and whatever is still here and is a connected field, it will still pre-fill out. So you could really condense it down if you wanted to. Maybe even not pull in the family members page. You know, you could remove entire pages if you want. So that's the benefit of using those pre-made data set pages. There is a lot that Persuasive already has built. It makes it so nice so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Now, a lot of this is already built in those fact finders, so definitely feel free to, you know, use what's already there even in the library. But I mean, if you want to start from scratch, you saw how easy it is, right? I can go out there and I can create a new template and I can just bring in what I want from the data set. Or maybe you saw something from another template. Like I've seen some advisors do that. For example, combining like a fact finder and the risk tolerance questionnaire. That's something that you can definitely do too. Now, when you're doing something like that, when you are bringing in from another template, you can only do one page at a time, but it's so nice because you're not having to, you know, if you did all this work in one template, but oh darn it, I want to have it in this other template. Oh gosh, I can't even remember how many versions back, but you had to create it all over again. Oh my goodness. But now there is this amazing import feature where I can just search for my template. And in this case, I can just click on the template, choose a questionnaire and bring that in. So if I had another page from the same form, I would, again, I'd have to go through the steps again. So it is just one page at a time, but it's such a lifesaver. So you can kind of combine forms that way. All right. Now let's talk about the best practices around capturing e-signatures for clients and co-clients. I get asked this all the time. We get asked this in chat support all the time. You know, how can I make this process of capturing e-signatures for my clients as streamlined and as frustration-free as possible? What I always recommend doing, and this is something that is going to be personal preference to you, is to actually just create a signature page on your form and have it be enabled with that co-client button. A great example is service agreements. Let me actually start with our service agreement that we have in the library, and I'm going to show you a couple of ways that you can actually set up e-signatures for clients and co-clients. You know, I tend to think that the option of creating an actual separate signature page to me is a little more user-friendly for your clients. But again, it's personal preference to you. You can go this route of laying down. Let's go back and look at the pages here. So as you can see here, we have this page set up as a household page on our default service agreement. But what we did is we laid down a signature option for each person. So in this case, the client's signature allowed signer is the primary. This one is set up to only allow the secondary person. With this setup right here, this is going to require both clients to be in the same location at the very same time, because there isn't the option to engage both of them in this case, because this is set up with in this case, a household type page. But let me kind of show you another route that I tend to see a lot of advisors go and like to go this route. I'll show you here. So instead of on this just being kind of a one-page form, what I tend to see advisors do is I tend to see them go to new page and create a blank page. In this case, we'll call it signatures. And we want to enable that co-client area. Now, what I'm going to do is, again, as you can see, it just starts with kind of a blank page. What I want to do is I'm actually going to go back here, and let's say I want to maybe copy this language here. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. I want to copy this. So I want to copy this verbiage that I need to have over here. So I'm going to create a new group. Just disable this group header just so we can create something. And let me lay down this text here with a text box. And now what I'm going to do is underneath this, I'm going to create a new element, and I'm going to create an e-signature element. Oops. Okay, now you'll notice that because of the page being set at the client/co-client level, there's no longer the option to choose a signer. And the reason for that is because, again, when we go to that page, there's now going to be an add co-client button. So when we add co-client, there's now going to automatically be a spot for each of them. So this is, this is personal preference to me, folks. I like this setup much better, just because you've got one singular signature page that the clients are going to, because again, when you're doing it like this, they have to be in the same location, which is kind of a pain. But I guess if the situation calls for it and it's not a big deal, then you could leave it like this. So let me go ahead and actually, let me remove this, and I'm going to show you. Let me go to my clients here, and I'm going to engage them with that service agreement that I just created. So let me go ahead and send this over. Actually, first, because I'm going to test this. No, sorry. I'm thinking about the wrong thing. So let me just engage both of them. And no, actually, you know what I want to do? Yeah, I need to change his email address because I'm going to be testing this as myself, and it's going to send me the pin, and this isn't a valid email, obviously. So let me change I had to think about that for a minute. Don't want that to go to test.com. All right, make sure that saves. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to show you what this looks like on their side. So I'm going to do this, send this immediately, and I'm going to go to my email. So, okay, bear with me a second because I've got another screen and I'm going to bring this over here so you guys can see what this looks like. So here we are signing as the first client. I did email authentication. So first step, she's going to get a secure PIN, which I did. Bring that over here, verify. Okay, now I'm going to go into the form. I know there's a couple of mandatory fields here. I'm going to fill these in real quick, and now we're going to get to that signature page. So again, because of the fact that I already have them set up in Precise FP, this is already splitting. So in this case, if she tried to click in Brandon's, she's not authenticated as Brandon. It's not going to allow her to sign into Brandon's spot. So in this case, she can only sign in her spot. So there we go. The nice thing about the e-signature elements, folks, is you'll see that it automatically places the date and time that it's signed. So you don't have to add a sign date field next to it. That's going to automatically appear there. And it will print their name too, so you don't need that. So now, what happened is because I engaged both of them at the starting point there, Brandon got his link too. So she's going to, oops, I forgot the fee here. All right. So now she's going to, okay, finish. Now let's go to, let me get his link here. Bear with me just a second so I can get that. Oh, I remember now. This was going to be something I wanted to show you guys. What I wanted to show, and this prompted this because I just did it incorrectly. Something that I also recommend doing because I just did it. What I recommend doing, and I'm going into the wrong form. Okay, what I recommend doing too, and this is something that's going to be personal preference to you. What I recommend doing is under the theme, there is this information, this spot here called confirmation. Highly, highly, highly recommend enabling this when you are setting up to have a signature from both of them, because if you send this out and you engage both of them, like I just did, and the client goes through and actually clicks on the finish button, when the co-client gets to it, it will actually show that the form is completed. So my recommendation to avoid that is to use this confirmation message that says maybe something along the lines of do not hit finish unless both parties have signed. Something like that, because what happens is that message will pop up when the client tries to go through here and clicks on finish. Maybe even creating like a pop-up message here that says, do not click on finish until both parties have signed. Something like that. This way, when the client gets here, they could just close out of their form, and then when the actual co-client goes through, they're able to sign. Let me just reopen that, so as the co-client I can sign now, so bear with me here. Let me go in and pull up the co-client's engagement now. So that was definitely something I wanted to show you folks. And I had it in my notes to share with you, and I completely forgot, but I'm actually glad that this happened because that prompted me to let you know. Okay, so here I am. Oh, sorry, I realize I'm not sharing that on my correct screen. So now what I'm doing is I'm in as Brandon. So Brandon is now clicking on the link of the form. He authenticated, or no, he didn't. Let me send myself the pin again so he will get his secure pin. Oops. There we go. He's going to go into it. He can see everything that's already done. He gets to the signature page. He can see that Emily has already signed. Now he's going in and signing. Save it. Now he can click on finish. So that's definitely something I recommend doing, because if you, it happened to me, as you saw. What happened is, as the client, I went into the form first and I signed it and I clicked on finish. And when my co-client tried to go into the form, it said that the form was completed. So you either have to communicate that to your client verbally, or I always recommend, making use of, in the template editor here, putting messaging around how this works. So just, something like a pop-up message on the page: do not click on finish until both parties have signed. Maybe even, enabling that confirmation message, something that says do not hit finish unless both parties have signed, something that'll pop up when they go through there and say, oh shoot, my co-client hasn't signed yet. So just some little tips and tricks there for you too. So, and then once that is done, you'll be able to go out here and, as you saw, the clients can download a copy of that signed document on their end, and you're going to be able to view and download the signed document on your side too. Here in Precise FP, you'll be able to view the information, view the signed document, view everybody that has signed. So when I click on this, I can open up the signed document, and in this case, I can see it signed by both. So that's definitely something that, again, I wanted to touch on today. I'm so sorry. It actually worked out great in doing it wrong, because that reminded me to bring that to you guys' attention. Wanted to definitely hit on that, show you how to set up that confirmation message. All right, so with that, I know that was a lot of information, so I wanted to take the rest of the time to just kind of open it up for questions. You can always go back and forth. If you guys have any questions, want to see something again, we could do that. And then, yeah, we'll go ahead and continue on here. Okay. So some questions have already started coming through. So again, guys, if you guys have any question, go ahead and put those right in the GoToWebinar control panel here. So somebody asked, what if your questionnaire is set up with both individual and household questions? Is it better to send to clients individually or to both primary, contact, and secondary? So when you have a mixture of pages that are both individual and household questions, like the fact finder, it is highly recommended to only engage one, because they are not going to be working together in real time on the same form. It is highly, highly, highly recommended to just engage one of them. So hopefully that helps with that question. Excuse me, somebody asked, can you use the fact finder as a lead generator on a website? Sure. I mean, I've seen people do that. Something to keep in mind though, if you are going to be using a template that is set up as high security, well, let me show you. Let me use one of these fact finders, and I'm going to go to, I have one already published. No, I don't. So let me just publish one of my fact finders here. What I recommend doing, if you've got a high security level form like a fact finder, is when you get to this spot here on the web published, is to allow visitors to sign up, put that as enabled. Because if you disable this, let me show you what this looks like when somebody goes to this link. They would have to be already established in Precise FP, meaning they would have already had created a password on a previously high security level form. So with a high security level form, what we do recommend is we do recommend allowing visitors to sign up. I'll show you the difference here. In enabling that, when I go to the link now there's this option for them to sign up. When they click on sign up, Then they're putting in their basics and they're creating a password, and then they're getting into the form. So yes, you can. I have seen advisors do this, but generally what I see people doing is I see them using like a low security level form. And then from there, maybe after they complete like the low security level form where you're just getting in like really just basic information, like just to kind of show you here, we've got this form here, which is a great starting point for like a lead gen form. It's our financial consultation form. It's asking for just some basic information. Now, another thing to keep in mind with high and low security level templates is a low security level template is never going to pre-fill with data, never, regardless if you're using one of the identification data set fields or not, it will never pre-fill with data. Whereas a high security level template would. A high security level template would pre-fill with data. And the reason for that is because we require the client to authenticate him or herself before they get into that high security level form. So when you're creating or maybe wanting to use one of these lead generation templates that we have, like again, using this financial consultation one is a great one to kind of use as a starting point. It has connected fields on it. But it's, you know, if you wanted to add more fields to it, you could. But in regards to bringing in fields from the data set, it's going to be very limited. And again, the reason for that is because a low security level template is not going to pre-fill out. And we didn't want to put too much information as far as you know, gathering too much sensitive information on a low security level form. But what can happen and what does happen when you use those these identification fields is kind of what you can refer to them when you're pulling in a new field from the data set on a low security level template. What happens is those fields do go and create an account or create a profile in PreciseFP for that person, and that information would store in the profile. That way, then if you then go and use those forms on like a high security level form and send it out to the client, it would pre-fill with that information. So hopefully that helps, just kind of give you some ideas there. You can definitely, again, publish a high security level template, but definitely make sure you've got that enable prospect signing up section enabled so that new folks could sign up. Let's see, what is the lowest security level for a template without client personal information? I mean, there's only two levels. There's either high security or low security. If you create a template and it doesn't have at least the first name, last name, and email identification fields on it, then when someone completes this form, they're going to come in as anonymous, and you're not going to be able to tie them to any contact information. Another thing too is with a low security level template, if you are going to be web publishing that and you have somebody that is already in PreciseFP that fills that out, it is not going to link up to their already existing record. If you have somebody in PreciseFP that you want to fill out a low security level form, the best route to go is to go into their profile and engage them this way if you wanted to be connected to their already existing profile. So some little tidbits of information for you guys there. Somebody asked, what are the different security options on a high security level form? Not sure what you're meaning there. I think I covered everything, but just to kind of reiterate, with a high security level form, the benefit of a high security level template is that it is going to be something that can pre-populate with data. The information can that you capture in a high security level form, if you make use of data set pages, can then store to the client profile, which can then ultimately go over to integration partners. Whereas on the flip side of that, with a low security level template, you're limited to just basic kind of identification fields on a low security level form. It would never pre-populate with information. Yeah, so those are the difference. It doesn't require the client to authenticate. So those are kind of the differences between the two security levels there. All right, guys, I didn't see any other questions come in. We'll go ahead and end here. If I see any other questions come in, I'll go ahead and address those after the webinar wraps. So I want to take this time and thank you all so much for joining me today. I hope this gave you some nuggets of helpful information when you're going out there and creating your templates. Of course, if you have any questions as you're going along, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Best way is through our live chat support. We're there Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern time. There's also a lot of great resources in our knowledge base, our YouTube channel. We have periodic webinars throughout the week. This is my new series that I'm going to be doing, this best practice. If you got ideas for something that you'd like me to showcase on a webinar, please let me know. I'm definitely all for it. But definitely be on the lookout for more of these. I'm going to be doing these throughout the year. So again, thank you all so much for joining today. I hope everyone has a wonderful afternoon and a great rest of your week. Take care, folks.